But wait, this can't be. I'm all alone. I'm all alone.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk. Sackhead Shaun and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
But is it? Is it really the best in late night talk? Now here's something interesting. We'll go into what the hell happened. You know, the standard what the hell happened kind of thing. But the reason I got jacked up in the first place, well, two reasons. Number one is from the wife's house in Ghetto Central to the studio near downtown Sacramento, and you have to consider that it's also 6 levels underground, under 12 feet of concrete. I hit every damn red light on the way here. And it started out with the first 3. After that got 3. That got me pissed off. After I hit the 4th, I said, screw it, I'm counting them. I hit 17 red lights on the way here. If that wasn't enough to jack me up, then, well, I knew that. Here's the dealio. Sackhead Shaun is not here. Temporarily, I am Sackhead Shaun. So if you're looking in chat, number one, thank you very much for everyone coming over to chat right now. Sackhead Shaun is in chat. Well, yes, it says Sackhead Shaun, but that's actually BZ, the Obliviating Zeppelin. I see Joe, Jersey Joe's in chat. I see Melanie Collette is in chat. I see Mike and Dave and Mary all in chat. Thank you ever so kindly for being here. Mike says that he assumes that Clint is drunk. That could be. I can't automatically discount it and say, no, that's not true. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn when I say this. Clint, I didn't get a message from him. So it's kind of weird on a Sackheads night, on a Wednesday night, to come here because it's really dark to get back over to the studio. But I've got a set of keys. I open the door. I have to unlock everything. It's dark inside. Normally, Shaun beats me here sometimes. Sometimes I beat him. Clint is the very last to get here. But you knew that. So I see that there's no Shaun, but I know why Shaun isn't here. I'll tell you why in just a moment. But I thought, okay, well, that means that Clint will be here and we can banter back and forth like we normally do. No Clint. So it's just me. Depending on how much shite I have, because I have to save something for tomorrow night. Depending on how much stuff I have, this may perhaps be an abbreviated show in terms of 1 hour instead of 2. I will fill a complete hour and not waste your time, guaranteed. I sort of had to set a lot of stuff up, most rapidamente, but I was able to do that. Here's the deal on Shaun, though. Shaun has a nephew, and his nephew has an insulin pump, and something went very wrong with him, and Shaun had to fly out very quickly. And he's in Boston right now, taking care of his nephew. God bless him for that. That's a wonderful thing. He'll be back, I'm hoping, next week. If not, then perhaps Clint and I on the Sackheads Radio Show next Wednesday. However, I know one thing. Number one, I was here. And number two, it screws a show's rhythm when people come here on a Wednesday night and they expect to listen to what's going on, and then all of a sudden, at the last moment, the rug is pulled out from underneath you, and that's sort of a bite in the Mark 1 Model 1 butt. So I figured, all right, I'm here. We got to keep the Sackhead Show rolling, and we will, in fact, do that. So as I was looking through some of the news that's going on, of course, just where do you start with all the things that are going on? The stuff that's going on with the deep state. We're hearing about Trump. We're hearing about people being hacked. We're hearing about Russia. We're hearing about Michael Flynn. What did he know? What did Trump know? Is it all Obama's fault? I went into a great deal of that last night. But in the process of going around the news, I found something that was a small, little bitty kind of article. And I thought, wow, I didn't know this. I had no idea. So I thought, number one, I'm sorry, there's not going to be any banter or jackassery at the very beginning of the show because, frankly, there's no one here to banter with, and I don't banter with myself very well. So we're going to go right into the meat of the pizza, so to speak. But after looking at this particular story, I thought, with all the other things that are going on, this is something that's much more serious than I could have imagined. And I have to admit, I was just a bit taken aback after having read this story. Oddly enough, it's out of Yahoo News. The title of the headline here is, oh, wait a minute, Mike also said in chat, don't count on Clint being here and sober. Okay, all right, that is a good point. The Yahoo News article is entitled, As North Korea Missile Threat Grows, Japan Lawmakers Argue for First Strike Options. And as you well know, following World War II, Japan greatly minimized its military. They believed that it was the right thing to do as part and parcel of the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan basically went through and said it was going to rebuild Europe, and then there was an agreement and negotiations going on, and Japan decided that it was going to predicate its entire military on a defensive footnote. They decided that they were not going to go offensive anymore because of what had occurred during World War II. And as we all know, it took 2 nuclear weapons dropped on Japan before the emperor and the other individuals that were ruling Japan at the time decided that they were going to capitulate. It's interesting insofar as, in hindsight, people are saying that that was one of the worst things that the United States ever did to another nation, is drop not 1, but 2 atomic weapons on a sovereign state. It's revisionist history says that didn't need to be done. And I submit that is, in fact, revisionist history. Japan didn't get it after the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Only after the second one was dropped on Nagasaki did it begin to be clear to them that we're not fooling around. And then they capitulated. It was signed on a battleship. There were various signatories to the pact. And from that point on, essentially, Japan became a nation based upon defense. So when I read the title of this particular story, it seems to me quite clear that Korea has clearly scared the shite out of Japan. Geographically, of course, you know that Japan rests to the south of Korea. There's the North Koreans, ruled by a series of insane dictators. And then there's South Korea, who is actually an industrial powerhouse. And many people across the United States are driving automobiles. They're on ships. Hyundai, for example, comes out of South Korea. Kia comes out of South Korea. Hyundai is a massive industrial manufacturer. Hyundai creates and builds everything from ships to cars to rifles. and all points in between. It's a huge industrial undertaking. So with that in consideration, this particular article about North Korea and Japan actually considering a first strike mode, the story says, rattled by North Korean military advances, influential Japanese lawmakers are pushing harder for Japan to develop the ability to strike preemptively at the missile facilities of its nuclear-armed neighbor. Preemptively. When Japan, who has been resolute and very peaceful since World War II, decides that it is actually considering a preemptive strike, then you have to do the machinations from that. And that is, if we decide that we're going to go along with that, and how can we and how can we not? This is an incredible situation. If Japan decides to make any kind of a preemptive strike on missile facilities in North Korea, you of course realize that to get there, they will either have to overfly South Korea, or they'll have to come in from the ocean, or they'll simply launch missiles, which they don't have, which is quite interesting. So if of whatever reason, with whatever equipment Japan has, and I'm not up to date on quite how Japan is armed militarily, but let's say for whatever reason they do manage to make some kind of an effective strike within North Korea and eliminate at least one or two missile sites, who's going to respond in kind? In other words, where will that go? Well, we know that China is aligned to a degree with North Korea. We know for a fact that China kinds of thinks of North Korea as its crazy-ass neighbor, ruled by a fat little chubby guy and a crazy individual, his father before that, and a series of crazy dictators. But who becomes aligned with that? If it's decided that somehow Japan brings the United States into this situation, how willing will China be to step into that situation as well? There are some massive considerations to consider. It says Japan has so far avoided taking the controversial and costly step of acquiring bombers or weapons, such as cruise missiles, with enough range to strike other countries, relying instead on its U.S. ally to take its fight to the enemies. But the growing threat by Pyongyang, including Monday's simultaneous launch of 4 rockets, is adding weight to an argument that aiming for the Archer rather than his arrows is a more effective defense. If bombers attacked us or warships bombarded us, we would fire back. Striking a country lobbing missiles at us is no different, said Isasori Onodera, a former defense minister who heads a ruling Liberal Democratic Party committee looking at how Japan can defend against the North Korean missile threat. Technology has advanced, and the nature of the conflict has changed. What would happen? It's stunning to think. For decades, for example, Japan has been stretching the limits of its sort of post-war pacifistic kind of constitution. And a series of governments...
North Korea launched 4 ballistic missiles Monday, landing most of them within 200 nautical miles of Japan's coastline. This is the country's second missile test in less than a month. Many experts see this as a reaction to the annual joint U.S.-South Korean military exercises being carried out right now. The exercises have been happening for 4 decades, and North Korea tends to act out in response around this time every year. But this year, North Korea's actions may be spurred by the fact that the U.S. is trying to give South Korea a missile defense system called THAAD as soon as possible. That system senses incoming missiles and shoots them down at higher altitudes. And An expert told CNN one way to beat it could be to send out multiple missiles at the same time. Still, another expert argued North Korea wasn't trying to send a message to the U.S., South Korea, or Japan, but to its ally, China. Partly in response to North Korea's previous missile launch, China announced it won't be importing any more coal from North Korea this year. North Korea's fragile economy depends on those exports. An expert told the Washington Post the latest test was a way of telling China the coal decision will be harmful. China condemned the missile launch.
So that, again, brings into question, what happens if someone, anyone, launches some kind of a preemptive strike on North Korea? Now, Japan, you'd noticed in the article that I read, Japan is indicating that it's hoping that its U.S. ally, us, again, may do it for them. I submit right now, in this political climate, that's not going to happen. Donald Trump going along with some kind of a strike-first type of program, I don't believe that he's going to happen. He's not going to go along with that. Now, the interesting part is that a number of governments have said that Tokyo has the right to attack enemy bases overseas when the enemy's intention to attack Japan is evident and the threat is imminent and there are no other defensive options. But while previous administrations shied away from acquiring the hardware to do so, and that's what you need the technology, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, his LDP, has been urging him to consider the step. That is to say, reacquisition of larger-scale military technology. That's important to consider for two reasons. Globally, in terms of history, people will look upon that perhaps as the rearming of Japan. Historically, Japan and China have not gotten along and have attacked each other over the years, especially in the 1800s and early 1900s. There was terrible conflict. China now, since then, obviously, is much more organized, much larger, has a much greater resource and technological and human base than Japan. And if Japan were to attempt to engage on any level with China, that would be a horrible thing for Japan. It's a small country, and you wouldn't want to think about those considerations. So, Japan, you as a sovereign nation, you never lose the right to self-defense. But it becomes a greater and then a global issue when you decide that you're going to make a preemptive strike. It is time we acquired the capability, said Hiroshi Yamatsu, the chairman of the LDP's Party Council on Security. I don't know whether that would be with ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, or even the F-35 fighter bomber. But without a deterrence, North Korea will see us as weak. Now, Japan does have a navy. They do have a military. They do have aircraft. They have access to those things. What they don't have is the long-range capability to, say, send missiles from silos from Japan all the way to North Korea. But the corollary to that is North Korea, a nuclear power, does in fact have the capability to throw missiles within that sphere of Japan and hit them. And North Korea, the little dude there, has been saying things against Japan for a number of times. Historically, Japan and North Korea don't get along very well. The idea has faced stiff resistance in the past, but the latest round of North Korean tests means Japan may move more swiftly to enact a tougher defense policy. We've already done the groundwork on how we could acquire a strike capability, said a source with knowledge of Japan's military planning. He asked not to be identified because of the sensitivity of the issue. Any weapon Japan acquired with the reach to hit North Korea would also put parts of China's eastern seaboard within range of Japanese munitions for the first time. Consider that just for a moment. In terms of history, China, if they acquire missiles, which they do not have now, And the only source for that would certainly not be China. It would have to be the United States. This is an opening. This is a series of potential events that could be globally catastrophic. North Korea has been insane for a number of years. The little chubby dude in North Korea has essentially, over the past few years, assassinated a good portion of his own family. That's just sort of the way that it's been. North Korea can't even manufacture good glass to put in the windows of its homes. Glass that isn't frosted. If you ever happen to look at some of the photographs of homes and whatnot in North Korea, a lot of what they do has to be imported. The size of the individuals, this was a striking thing when I discovered this. The size of the average North Korean, due to diet or lack thereof, North Koreans are physically smaller than their South Korean counterparts because South Korea is a westernized industrial nation, very strong, well-fed. All the money that goes into the coffers goes into North Korea's military budget. Very little, if any, goes back out to the people. Very interesting situation. Anyway, because of the missile placement, what that means is that China getting pissed off is quite an obvious kind of thing. And so Beijing is strongly protesting the deployment of the Advanced U.S. Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, the THAAD that they were mentioning in that particular video. It's an anti-missile system that's going to South Korea. China has missiles that can hit Japan, so any complaints that it may have are not likely to garner much sympathy in the international community, said Onodera. Currently, more than 3 missiles at one would be too many for Japan's already stretched ballistic missile defense to cope with, another source familiar with Japan's capabilities said. So what that means is you throw more than 3 missiles at Japan, and they won't have the technological ability to defeat all of them, and certainly not more than that. One serious concern for Japan is North Korea's development of solid fuel systems, meaning solid fuel rockets, demonstrated last month that will allow it to conceal preparations for missile strikes because it no longer needs fuel for its missiles just prior to firing. The test also demonstrated a cold launch with the rocket ejected from the launcher before engine ignition, minimizing damage to the mobile launch pads. Japanese officials have noted that the launch truck was equipped with tracks rather than wheels, allowing it to hide off-road. In any event, when I read that story, I thought, with all the wackiness that's going on right now, this is a situation that is apparently quite tenuous. Japan is frightened. Japan would like no other thing than to see the United States step up and defend them, which in most situations we likely would. But when you're talking about a first strike, in my opinion, the entire game changes. The ability to defend yourself, as I indicate, no one loses that particular right. But Japan, to have a first strike capability, and if they were to actually do that, it's a game changer. Because then, now it brings all the big boys and girls into the event. And if China comes in, and we're involved, and Japan is involved, it's not far off to say that now you could be talking nuclear war. Obviously, China is a nuclear power. They are rapidly expanding their military. They always have been for quite some time. Their budget Their fiscal power right now is a little more shaky. It's not quite the superpower in terms of cash that it once was. They're trying to get back on their feet, and they're in the process of doing that. But this raises a massive amount of questions. One of the first is, what would Donald Trump do if he was faced with that situation? Would he go all in for Japan? I'm not so sure. He's the individual, if you recall, who indicated that it wasn't necessarily a good idea to go into Iraq. And if I'm not mistaken, he said that he, as president, would not have done that. So people are chalking him up to the isolationist type of side, the way that the United States was essentially in the late 30s prior to World War II. FDR eliminated that, but at that point, particularly in consideration of Pearl Harbor, we had no choice. And there are some that say that FDR had knowledge of the Pearl Harbor attack and decided that it would be in the interest of the United States to not try to intercede and to allow that attack to go on. Well, coupled with the fact that technology at that point didn't have the ability, nor did we have really the aircraft and the technology to go out and find the carrier groups, etc., etc. That's another issue for history. But it makes you think, it makes you wonder, in today's climate, with this presidency, what would President Trump be inclined to do? At this point, the only conclusion that I can really draw is that I think he would tend to be an isolationist. Now, if he threw missiles, if Japan threw missiles at North Korea, that's another thing entirely. But I would expect that, well, we know that Japan does not have the ability to launch missiles at this point at North Korea. So the only way that I could think that they could strike is by air or asking the United States to intercede on its behalf. When I first read this article, and I first saw it today, probably about an hour ago, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about with the rest of the sackheads. This could be a game changer. And depending on where it goes, I hate to start out a show being Mr. Bummer, because this leads to all sorts of places that the world at this point I don't believe is ready to engage in. Nuclear war. If you draw China in to North Korea and the United States, and if we go nuclear, the gloves are off. The potential for very bad things and getting other nations involved is very high. So I'll tell you what. Hey, it's the bottom of the hour. Let's take a break. And please, if you would, on Sackheads Radio, please come back. Thank you kindly.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Shaun.
Dude, I'm not saying Cap is stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on shrmedia.com and highplains.dailynews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
This just in, because my wife, God bless her, I love her, just sent me a text during the commercial and said, "Dear, the toilet is leaking terribly." Oh my God, now I've got toilet problems. So when I go home, I'm going to have apparently a flooded bathroom. Oh joy, can't wait.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
There's a man by the name of Peter Schweitzer. He wrote a book called Clinton Cash. And let's see. Last night, he was on Fox Business News, their network, with Lou Dobbs. I happen to enjoy listening to Lou Dobbs. I sort of bounce back and forth between Fox News and Fox Business News. But this is kind of an interesting interview with regard to the deep state. It's interesting to hear what Schweitzer has to say about it.
And here now to discuss the efforts of the deep state conspiracy and campaign against President Trump and his administration, as well as the Trump-Russia conspiracy theorists. Peter Schweitzer, president of the Government Accountability Institute. He's also executive producer of Clinton Cash, which is based on his best-selling book of the same name. Great to have you with us, Peter. This is a remarkable time. The deep state conspiracy, the campaign that's at work. We have never seen in this country anything like what we behold today, as it is clear a highly organized and powerful group of people are trying to subvert the presidency of Mr. Trump.
I completely agree. I have never seen this ever before, historically. As I've said, there are so many forces that are arrayed against President Trump. Where would he begin? Even with the leaks that are not going to stop, and they can come from so many managers, so many upper managers, so many middle managers. And Obama, I am convinced, specifically laid and placed landmines in terms of personnel against Trump prior to his exit.
Well, let me tell you, I would recommend everybody go out and get a academic book that was published last year called What Washington Gets Wrong. And it's two scholars from Johns Hopkins University who do a massive survey of senior unelected executives in government, basically the deep state, and asks them a bunch of questions. And as the authors describe, the deep state has contemptuous attitudes towards the average American. They think they are far less educated than they actually are. They think they're far more dependent on government than they are. They're arrogant. They believe, and they say in these surveys, that if the American people want one thing and they think it's wrong, they're going to push something else. There's a massive disconnect, and the deep state is real, and it's a threat to our republic form of government.
And we're watching it at work. It is the group of people, at least part of the group of people, that President Trump campaigned against for a year and a half. These are the elitists who hold power, who look down their nose in the most un-American way at their fellow citizens.
These are the people that I describe as having sinecure. And if you happen to look up that word, that means people that are in advantageous places who essentially produce nothing, make bank doing it, and are set for life with a wonderful retirement. And those are the individuals that when Trump said during his campaign that he's going to drain the swamp, and he's talking about D.C., and he's addressing the established hacks like McCain, Graham, etc., he's also addressing the individuals who are working in lower placed levels in what is termed the deep state. But these are the people that they have the ability, it looks as now that their phony baloney jobs are being threatened by President Trump. D.C. has some of the most prime expensive real estate in the nation. D.C. and the bedroom communities surrounding that area, its property values have skyrocketed and gone boom, whereas the rest of the country has slided down. People are not making as much money as they used to. D.C., however, is extremely wealthy. And these are the people of the deep state that are physically, they believe they are being threatened, and that's why they are fighting back.
And by the way, they continue to run a government, an establishment, despite the fact that they have now in the White House a formidable opponent in President Trump. It's staggering, and to see this continue. I mean, for example, today, Peter, Michael Hayden, former head of the CIA and NSA, I love these words, saying that that Trump's illegitimate worldview is a problem, and because it's perpetrated with the left-wing media. Here it is, the left-wing media, and they are playing with it. I think it's an illegitimate worldview, and I think it's a non-fact-based worldview. As he says this, you have to just think, my God, did the man miss an entire 8 years of American presidential history? A worldview that is not supported by reality, the facts. That is a perfect description of the Obama administration, is it not?
Yeah, and I mean, look, this is a test time for a lot of people in Washington, D.C. who say very eloquently and very smartly year after year that they believe in our representative form of government and they're serving our representative form of government. Well, now somebody has been elected that they don't like, that is antithetical to the way they think things should be done.
So therefore, all that is thrown out the window, and it's now bullshit. And they're going to do everything they possibly can to obstruct and undermine President Trump. They're not going to do it. They are doing it right now.
And now it's the real test. Is their rhetoric actually live up to the reality? And what we are seeing is...
Of course it does. I mean, the answer we should provide. Of course it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a huge problem. And I think there needs to be a lot of soul searching by people in Washington, D.C. As to what their precise attitude is, because this is how representative government works. And the people spoke, and Donald Trump was elected. You don't have to agree with what his policy prescriptions are, but you have to recognize he was selected. He is now the constitutional president of the United States. And if you are in public service, you are in public service. The public does not work for you. You work for the public, and the public made a decision last November.
Peter, you and I both know, and I think most Americans know and understand. We can talk about what should be done by the deep state, the permanent government of bureaucracy, the elites who dominate in so many quarters. The reality is we have elected a president who deserves our support to a person, to a citizen, who is actually the greatest possible response that could be provided in this great constitutional republic to the deep state and its power and its abuse of power and its hold on so much of this country, its political and economic power. I mean, we don't have to read an academic book. And by the way, I support your recommendation. It is a terrific book. But we don't also have to sit here and gaze at our navel very much here. This is a time to support the President of the United States, is it not?
Yes, it is. And an interesting point was made in chat. And guess what? I'm going to go there. Dave Milner said the big test is Trump actually going to drain the swamp? Well, I think that's what he stated. As we can see right now, he's done, or in the process of doing all the things that he said that he was going to do. No one, thought he was going to get installed as president, and then when he was there, no one expected him to conduct himself in such a fashion that he was going to get the things that he said done. Dave also said souls don't get searched much inside the Beltway. And then Mike came up in chat. Thanks for everyone being in chat tonight. Mike came up and said he needs to do mass firings at NSA, FBI, and CIA. And that's when I thought, yes, absolutely. Holy crap, are you ever correct about that? So there was an article from Politico that I noticed with regard to firings, etc. And that sort of tickled me with regard to this. Because James Comey, director of the FBI, and by the way, if you didn't know it, directors are appointed by presidents. And the time in which they serve is generally a decade. So Comey has been there for 4 years right now.
You're stuck with me for about another 6.5 years, and so I'd love to be invited back again.
So Comey says, you're stuck with me. He said Wednesday at a Boston College conference on cybersecurity that he's going to serve his entire 10-year term as FBI director. Really? Because the first thing that I was saying, I wrote an article about this, is Trump made a huge mistake by keeping Comey. The FBI, it's historical that the letters stand for fidelity, bravery, and integrity. In my opinion, James Comey has no fidelity, no bravery, and no integrity. He has no cogent interpretation of the law, could easily have recommended an indictment on Hillary Clinton, but politically, he let that get into the decision-making process. It's a little bit inside baseball in terms of the law. But he made an improper and, in my estimation, a decision that was not predicated in law whatsoever. So Trump made a big mistake. He kept Comey. On the other hand, there's a large contingent of individuals who say, wait, Comey can't be replaced. You have to go high crimes and misdemeanors against James Comey to get him out of there. Well, you may or may not know that at the beginning of each new administration, new presidential administration, historically, the various USAs, the U.S. attorneys in all the districts, submit their letters of resignation. And if you may historically remember, George Bush got into a large kerfuffle when he accepted all of them. That may be done, that may not be done. It's been done in the past. And then when George Bush decided that he was going to do it, because he's a conservative and a Republican, everyone said, that's horrible, that's terrible. So then when I said this, in Twitter and a number of other places on my blog and whatnot, people were saying that it is impossible, lacking an absolute indictment or felony charges, to remove the FBI director. Now, it's interesting because the FBI director is not a cabinet position. He is appointed by a president, and it's sort of a gray, misty area. Or is it? Is it really? Because the dealio is that, in my opinion, yes, he can be fired. Under the law, presidents may fire FBI directors. Under a United States statute that first went into effect in 1968, FBI directors are nominated by the president and must be confirmed by the Senate. So he had to go through his judicial scanning, so to speak. So it's a process that's similar to the nomination and confirmation of like a Supreme Court justice or presidential cabinet members. But unlike all the justices who are appointed for life and can't be fired, but they can be impeached by Congress, which has happened to my recollection only one time in our history, or cabinet officials who have no real set terms, the FBI's director is appointed to a single term of 10 years. So the statute establishing that 10-year term, that limit, was passed in 1976, 4 years after the death of, guess who? J. Edgar Hoover, who held on to that job, for God's sake, for 48 years. But a 2014 report I dug up by the Congressional Research Service said there are no statutory conditions on the president's authority to remove the FBI director. So what that means, in other words, is the president can, in fact, fire the FBI director. Now, an FBI director can also be removed by Congress, should they deem, through the impeachment process. But President Trump, contrary to what I've been told by the little leftists all around Twitter and on my blog, yes, the President Trump can, in fact, fire James Comey. And I think he should. So, chat, thank you for that. We went sort of laterally there for a moment or two. I'd like to finish the interview with Schweitzer and Lou Dobbs, but thanks for reminding me that, because I was going to talk about it anyway, and you gave me a little nudge in that direction, so thank you.
Well, look, I think that people have to support ultimately the Constitution, and the president won. And in a debate or a conflict between unelected government officials who have a very haughty attitude about the American people and an elected president, the decision always needs to go with the elected president. That's a civics 101 question.
I went through a larger chain of causal chain than I normally function at. I usually am somewhat more direct, and that is support President Trump, because against all comers, he is the guy who deserves our support for the reasons you mentioned and for the simple, straightforward matter that he is the President of the United States.
So, yes, the deep state, it exists, and it's working 24/7 to try to remove Trump and undermine him at every point, at every second. I've been listening to Tucker Carlson. I think I'm not exactly sure where he came from. I think perhaps he came from Politico. He may even have come from CNN for a little bit. But now I've got him set on my DVR. There was a particular incident not too long ago. I think it was February 27th, so maybe about a week or so ago, where Bill Nye the Science Guy, whom I state is Bill Nye the Science Hack, had a little tete-a-tete with Tucker Carlson.
We're coming to you live from outside the U.S. Capitol building, where President Trump will address a joint session of Congress in fewer than 24 hours. You may hear construction noise behind us during the show. That's because there is construction going on. There always is in Washington, the richest city in America. We want to thank you for that, for sending your tax dollars here.
There you go. The richest city in America, just as I said. You betcha.
It's built a pretty nice place. Well, Bill Nye the Science Guy is now aspiring to a new title, Bill Nye the Psychoanalyst Guy. During a Facebook Live event with Senator Bernie Sanders today, the mechanical engineer and TV personality said skeptics of global warming suffer from the psychological delusion of cognitive dissonance.
Yes, so if you don't believe in global warming, climate change, whatever the hell the current phrase may be, which changes by leftists when it's convenient for them, you're a psycho.
It's a slight bump up from last year when he was open to the idea of imprisoning skeptics, global warming, as war criminals.
Imprisoning skeptics, global warming skeptics, as war criminals. Has this country and that fucktard gone off the rails?
Is that the choice? Bellevue or Nuremberg? Bill Nye joins us now. Bill, it's great to see you. That doesn't sound like science to me, Bill Nye the Science Guy. That sounds like something very different.
So cognitive dissonance is not a delusion. It's a feature. It's human nature. So we in the science community are looking for an explanation why climate change deniers, or extreme skeptics, do not accept the overwhelming scientific evidence for climate change. And
let me give you, for example, Bill Nye the Science Hack. It's like this. For every study, research paper that you can come up with out of your brown little sphincter, I can come up with an equal number or more studies which say that global warming is specious, because there's not enough information over a sufficient range of years to know how the world cycles.
the most reasonable explanation is you have a worldview, and then you have evidence, and the evidence disagrees with your worldview, so you deny the evidence, and then along with that, you deny the authorities that are providing the evidence. Now, if you have a better hypothesis for why climate deniers deny the overwhelming scientific evidence, bring it on. It's not a delusion. It's just like the fox and the grapes.
Well,
you can't reach the grapes, so he says the grapes are no good.
Look, people do come to every debate with preconceptions, and you're right about that, of course. But the essence of science is extreme skepticism. We always ought to be asking ourselves, is my hypothesis true?
I'm a member of both skeptic organizations, Mr. Carlson, and this is climate change denial is denial. The evidence is overwhelming.
Bullshit. The evidence is not overwhelming. Just like the rest of leftists would have you believe whatever they say goes. And again, I say, bullshit. That's not how it goes. Because you say it makes it so? No, it doesn't.
Don't get me wrong. I love you as a person more than life itself. But the evidence for climate change is overwhelming. So we are looking for an explanation of why you guys are having so much trouble with it.
So then, before the name calling begins, and before you try to end the conversation, let's start it by asking what exactly you mean. Now, I think most people are open to the idea that the climate is changing. It has always changed, by the way, as you know.
Yes. Isn't that weird? The climate does, in fact, change day to day. What a shocker. I am abso-fucking-lutely gobsmacked.
It's the rate, Mr. Carlson. It's the rate that's such a concern.
The core question, from what I can tell, is why the change.
Dave brings up another excellent point in chat. Thermometers in the 18th century were hardly standardized.
Is it part of the endless cycle of climate change, or is human activity causing it? That seems to be the debate to me, and it seems an open question, not a settled question, to what degree human activity is causing that. Is that?
I found, by the way, as I was listening to this, the article to which it's referred from the WashingtonTimes.com. Bill Nye, the science guy, is open to criminal charges and jail time for climate change dissenters. Bill Nye, the science guy, says in a video interview released Thursday, this is back last year, that he's open to the idea of jailing those who deviate from the climate change consensus. Stop. There is no consensus. The only consensus is in the mind of leftists and the religious left. Why do I call them the religious left? Because it's all about faith. Statistics can be bent on either side. And we know for a fact that statistics have been bent, the proverbial hockey stick, and especially the recent NOAA reports that have come out have been proven to be specious completely. So asked about the heated rhetoric surrounding the climate change debate, such as Robert F. Kennedy's previous comments that some climate skeptics should be prosecuted as war criminals, Mr. Nye replied, well, okay, we'll see what happens. So as far as he's concerned, yes, it does seem like a great idea that people who are climate skeptics should be jailed. That's what leftists are saying about climate skeptics, and it's also what they're saying about people who have a right to free speech. Don't you see where this all is going?
It's not an open question. It's a settled question. Human activity is causing climate change.
To what degree?
To a degree that it's a very serious problem in the next few decades.
Wait, stop. Wait, no, you said it's a settled point, and I'm asking a very precise question.
In the science community, it's a settled point.
Again, bullshit. For every piece of paper you can show me Bill Nye the Science Hack, I can show you another study that contravenes.
Okay, then if you'll elucidate it for me, I'd be grateful. To what degree is climate change caused by human activity? Is 100% of climate change is caused by human activity? Is it 74.3%? It's settled science. Please tell us to what degree human activity is responsible.
So the word degree is a word that you chose. But the speed that climate change is happening is caused by humans. Instead of happening on timescales of millions of years, or let's say 15,000 years, it's happening on the timescale of decades and now years. Now, I offered...
Wait, but hold on. But to what extent is human activity responsible for speeding that up? I mean, please be more precise.
If that's the number you want. Humans are causing it to happen catastrophically fast.
Bill Nye is saying 100%. That's called anthropogenic climate change. Anthropogenic meaning that it's caused by man, by humans. Again, bullshit. Dave says in chat a very interesting point. The scientific community has been intimidated into settling the science. Dave, you make an excellent point. I would also add this. There is money behind it. There is cash behind it. And where there's money and where there's cash, you're going to have corruption. And I submit that there is corruption. I've had it with Bill Nye the Science Guy. He's Bill Nye the Science Hack. When I say that, the first thing I think of is that movie Mars Attacks. When I say the word hack. Anyway, that's where I went. I think I've corrupted the Sackheads radio show sufficiently for the past hour. Sackheads Clint and Sackheads Shaun should be back in the places with little smiling faces next week. Thank you for having the temerity to stand by, Sackheads BZ. I'll be on tomorrow night in my regular show starting at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. On the Pacific, and I've got some interesting things for tomorrow night, especially with regard to the CIA, and gosh, we know what's going on with the CIA now, don't we? Or do we? In any event, thanks for standing by. I could not let the show not go on. So thank you very much for being here. Thanks all the people in chat for being here. Mary, Mike, Dave, Joe, Mamba, and of course Sackhead Shaun, meaning me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening and come back. Oh, hey, Jersey Joe, if I'm not mistaken, is on tomorrow morning. Come back, listen to the Joe. It's all about the Jersey Joe. Thanks for listening. Boys and girls, appreciate it. Come back.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, the air to give you the best in conservative talk. Sackhead Shaun and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.